Hi there, welcome to a focused video for a survivor dealing with PTSD, a possible deep freeze, that inner want to be able to reach out to a loved one, but the fear that can be associated with it, which can lead to difficult decision making. Today is about highlighting the fear, spreading that awareness to make sense of it and why a survivor does worry. There are key factors and considerations. As much as the positives can be highlighted, reaching out, reconnecting, feeling warmth, it's important to have that grounding effect, to know the other circumstances and situations. This is not about being overly negative, it's about being realistic. So when a survivor has all the cards on the table, the pros, the cons, the strengths, the weaknesses, the risk to reward, it can make decision making a little bit easier, knowing what to do, how much to reveal, to share, to open up, to say as much or as little as the survivor wants to, but still the possible goal to just simply reach out in some way can help. So the recent videos that have been done, focusing in on the environment to cool, to calm the body, the nervous system, to make decisions, slowly learning how to retrust the heart with decisions and thoughts and feelings. But it's also important to highlight the areas which can be a bit invisible at times, an extra level of weight which can make situations a bit of a struggle. Whilst the environment, if a person was in, being toxic around bad people, that can make decision making difficult. But what about when all that is scrapped, when it's just the survivor by themselves? The thought of reaching out can be scary. Reconnecting with a loved one, a friend, or more so a partner feels like there's more at stake, there's more at risk. That there might have been a deep-rooted fear, even during a friendship or relationship in the past, in holding someone at arm's length, a level of self-protection, wanting someone and the concept of something, but the fear of history repeating itself as in the past, the fear of losing, the fear of rejection, the fear of pushing someone away. Deep-rooted fears channeled through trauma and traumatic events in the past. By holding something at arm's length, it's like encasing a perfect painting. You can look at it, you can get somewhat close, but you're never close enough. So whilst it's protected, it's at the cost of the intimacy, it's the cost of the connection, it's the cost of progression forwards in life together. But the situation now is different. It's not about maintaining a connection or a level of safety and distance, but now it's about reconnecting, reaching out. So in terms of guidelines or what to do and what not to do, it's a bit different now. The fears have changed as well. Whilst back then a survivor may have feared losing someone and couldn't lose anyone else in life because of losing enough people before that, traumatic events, grief, etc. But the reality is, a survivor who wants to reconnect, in a sense, means, in terms of a connection, it may feel like it's already been lost, and that can be a deep-rooted fear itself. Has it been ruined now? Has this freeze, this withdrawal, ruined the one good thing in the survivor's life? Could be an inner monologue. But we're here today to highlight a list of fears and worries, but provide a little bit of perspective as well. Now, I will have a follow-up video in regard to the positives and what can be done to ease it just a little bit. And I might add methods today. Doesn't have to rush in. Don't have to say too much. Don't have to expose too much. It's, you do it under your own control, your own pace, your own timing. It doesn't have to be rushed. And if it's done in a controlled way, there doesn't have to be much negative reactions either. That can be channeled through a fear too. Said we're going to go through it bit by bit today. But if you are interested in videos like this, the full playlist of psychology and PTSD is available top right corner where the I symbol is. And there'll be the odd loose video attached where the I symbol is under the playlist from the last psychology video that I did on either trusting the heart or peace within a toxic environment. The importance of reconnecting fear is a grounded approach to not rush in. In the past, there may have been times where a survivor felt the need to rush, to push something in order to get better, in order to heal, in order to be in a proper relationship and commit as a proper partner and be the partner that they want to be to the other half. And maybe there was a motivator to get better, to heal, to get therapy, but if it was rushed or it wasn't done at quite the right time, it could imply the survivor was doing it more for the other person and less for themselves. For the ideal approach, it would be doing it when you're ready, when you want to. And maybe it was a bit half and half, but in this situation now with reconnecting, it should be about reconnecting because it's what you want, not all about what you think they want. Just by reconnecting is a step in progression, as in proving to yourself not all is lost and not all is broken. Proving to yourself that you can trust your heart and proving that you still have that strength within to try. And whilst there may be that feeling of trying back then before a split, before that silent period, different situation then. Because back then, you could say it was the discovery phase of a friendship, a relationship, and the rough patches, the difficult moments, the true trauma response and triggers, even if it's indirect and not personal to the relationship. The other half wouldn't have known about it at the time, nor expected it, and likely the survivor did not anticipate the flare-ups either. So it was unknown of, or it was uncertain at the time. Maybe, just maybe, the arm's length was that idea that if things did get messy or dark or rough, not dragging the other person down. But if a person's where they are now, after a deep freeze, but wanting to reconnect, it's about balancing the needs of the survivor, listening and respecting to them as for an inner reflection, and then just weighing it up as in the person you're reaching out to. Because the important thing with reconnecting is you don't have to reconnect with everyone. You don't have to rebuild, remend bridges with everyone. You could possibly just choose a person out of your friendship group, a particular relationship, someone that gets you most and understands you the best. Someone who's more patient than anyone else of your friendship group or client list or work colleagues or even family. You pick that one person out that made a difference in your life and made you feel different compared to all other times in a positive way. If you rush in without considering the fears, it can mean reaching out to too many people, trying to please everyone, trying to make it up to everyone, trying to pretend to be okay to everyone to avoid questioning. It runs you thin, it exhausts you, and it can send you right back to a freeze or a crash or illness. Taking it slower this time round with understanding what's at stake, not the fear of losing another person, but just the concern and awareness of your own health, because that's what's most important. Whilst work can be important, if you don't have health or good health, work is impacted anyway, so your health comes first. When it comes to a relationship and being together, health comes first in order to be present for that relationship But there is a slight difference this time round. At a time back then, when things were so-so, or functional at least, survivor trying their best to stay afloat daily, whilst also trying to work in this new relationship and make it work. Working in the background to try to make it work, to get better, to shut out the past, to drown it out, to move it aside. As granted, it may have not worked. During that period, in terms of the timing and the commitment, a lot going on. But we're talking about present time now. A possible freeze, a crash, paralysis, burnout. There's less going on in life, understandably. So there's more room and more space to consider, as in the approach and where to go first. Is it a matter of must get better, must heal, must recover, must get back to work, and then reach out to someone? Does it have to be that way though? It may have felt like it had to be that way back then. And if there was a time of getting help or therapy and there was advice by different people of don't get into a relationship until you're healed or it's been sorted, because if rushing into a relationship whilst trying to heal, it could jeopardize it. It could deregulate the progress. It's not like that for everyone. It's just advice. It's ultimately down to what the survivor wants, and that choice needs to be respected nevertheless. But the thing is, more was going on back then, or possibly within life anyway. If things have got a bit quieter, the world has shrunk just a little bit. There's, in a sense, less pressure, or there's less going on. It's severe, it can be a struggle. But decision making, one decision at a time, instead of juggling everything like back then, from friendships, relationships, family life, toxic environments, excessive work, demanding clients, schedules, deadlines, running about, lone wolf, hyper-independence, and all of that. Trying to keep everyone happy, please everyone, neglecting your own needs. Whereas this time round, it's about putting your needs first, because the world around may have shrunk to a smaller size, meaning there's less to deal with, less to face. But understandably, when facing and dealing with less, that one thing you pick out and focus on will be magnified, because it's all the concentration on that one thing. And if it's like a person, the reconnection process, there might be feelings, as in the effects it has on a survivor, the positives of wanting to get close, wanting to reach out and say something, but sometimes the fears can take over, whether it's driven by the trauma, the brain, the nervous system. The effects can be a bit of anxiety, worry, feeling anxious, uncomfortable, feeling that urge within, but also reluctant. So it kind of feels like it's not really going anywhere, which can lead to frustration, just wanting to reach out, but possibly not having the energy to type, to make that connection, to fill those demands or expectations. But this is the thing. You're the one reaching out. The ball is in your court. They can't do anything. Maybe they tried in the past, maybe it didn't work. But the ball is in your court, meaning you call the shots, meaning you can make the choice. The power, the choice is in your hands, meaning you can go as fast as you want, as slow as you want. You can explain and go in deep as much as you want, or you can just send a simple hi. But it's important to keep it real. Real with them and honest with yourself on how things are. You don't have to expose yourself too much, but there's no harm in being honest for the sake of yourself, not living a lie, being able to release anything pent up, and being honest can reduce how they react as well, and if they do. We are touching upon these fears, but I will make it rather clear in just a moment, as in the specifics and how it can be countered with an alternative perspective. The negatives, or more so the worries, the fears, are very real to a survivor, but it doesn't have to define the situation and be like, well, with all these fears, it's just not worth doing. It's too stressful. It's too much of a worry. It's not all about that in today's video, okay? So, in no real particular order, the first fear could be the silence, the worry of, if a survivor was to reach out, reconnect through meeting in person, a phone call, or more so a text message to start things off, saying whatever, but the other partner does not respond at all. That silence can be deafening, and to a survivor, it can be scary, it can be concerning and hurtful, as in a survivor could feel hurt by the silence because they've mustered all that energy and strength, capacity, what they possibly have, to just reach out, all for what? For silence, coldness, or so it seems. Now that partner, the other half, may have their own reasons, as in their silence. It could be personal, it could be private, it could be other things going on in life. It doesn't have to instantly mean by default that the silence is driven because of the withdrawal from the survivor over time, you know? The silence can be a fear because it feels like maybe a repeat of the past in a way, where during a environment in life, a bad ex-partner gave the silent treatment to said survivor, cold treatment, when the survivor was at a low or struggling or needed comfort, reassurance, and the other half, the ex-partner, wasn't there for the survivor. Now those dynamics are a little bit different, but the crossover of the theme of silence and the effect it has on the survivor, that aspect of it repeating itself in a different situation with the very person the survivor actually looks up to and has a lot of respect for. There could be that inner monologue of, they're silent, they've not reached out, they've not messaged me back. To be honest, I don't blame them. That could be the monologue. But instead of wording it as, it's because of me, what I've done equals their silence, I don't blame them, consider the alternatives, as in, okay, they're silent, but there could be other things going on in that person's life. Consider the alternatives instead of blaming yourself or believing that your withdrawal has led to all of this. There are many other things going on in life and factors which can contribute to a person's own withdrawal or focus. The main aim is, silence or not, it's just about proving to yourself and being able to release something. It's kind of like the equivalent. At the least, treat it like this. There was something you wanted to say or get out, but you didn't know how. You write it down on a note, you put it in a bottle, you throw it into the sea, metaphorically, or maybe some people actually do that. Or you were really stressed within, you went to nature, quiet, and you screamed as loud as you could to release that energy, and it was a soothing feeling. It made you feel a little bit better afterwards. It could still be treated through the idea of reconnecting, but reconnecting not with high expectations. That's another aspect. By going in with not high expectations, it can reduce the fears. If you already sense that maybe reaching out, it might not yield a response, you at least know with what you're dealing with and the likely outcome. And if they don't respond, it's no surprise, but at least you got to say what you wanted to say and get off your chest. And there is still that chance that they may have seen the message, they might just not have responded, or at that moment they didn't. But going in with low expectations, you can't be as disappointed or disheartened. It might be hard, but it's just something to consider. Treat the possible reaching out and the fear of silence as in, it doesn't have to be defined by the end outcome of the other person's lack of response. You can treat that situation as your own goal, your own victory in having the courage to reach out despite all the fears within. By being able to say and get off what's on your chest, just to release any tension within, being able to put it out there, and then, if needed, to move forwards, whatever that is in life. The reconnection doesn't have to lead to high demands, high expectation. It doesn't have to start from where it left off. It could continue if it was agreed upon, or it could reset, or it could just be mutual. It's just about understanding the different outcomes and have low expectations for the less disappointment and reduced fears in a way. Silence doesn't always mean something negative, and silence doesn't always mean it's personal. If you feared that, as in what the other half could be thinking and their lack of response, consider it the reverse way around. That during a deep freeze, when a person withdraws, is it personal? Is it done with intent and malice? Likely not. It's happened because uncontrollable factors and unexpected events have taken place, which has overwhelmed the mind, the nervous system, and the defense mechanisms kick on in automatically to protect oneself. And it can spiral, and it can be prolonged and chronic. It's not done because the survivor wants to hurt the other partner or friends. It's done to protect themselves, and also because they might be struggling to cope and they don't know what else to do. It's happened, but it wasn't personal, and it wasn't done with intent. Treat it like that, but flipped around to the other half, the other partner, or former partner, depending on how you word it. As in, their silence might be because there's other things going on or stuff out of their control, but it's not personal to you. Like when it comes to a survivor dealing with each day or each hour or each minute, day by day, little steps, not looking too far ahead, because that's too much, too overwhelming, too much to consider. Just focusing on in the moment, living in the moment. Maybe apply that same mentality with reaching out to someone little by little, just focusing in on what you want to say, focusing in on what you would talk about or highlight or bring up. And just with low expectations, without looking too far ahead, too many demands, too much pressure. But a short-sighted approach can actually help mask or at least ease the fear. Sometimes it's the fear because of looking too long-term, too far ahead. As well, silence, it could be temporary as well. The said person could simply be busy in life or elsewhere doing something. They may not have signal, they may not have internet connection. So even if it's like short, mid-term, it doesn't mean to say it's a bad reaction, no reaction. It's just that they might be busy or other things are going on in their life which they just don't have the energy themselves. And a survivor could possibly relate to that because they've been there too. That would lead to a level of relatability, can lead to its own form of feeling connected in a sense, understanding it, just at a different time point. Now, moving on. Another fear could be a reaction from the other half, but more so a negative one. A survivor could fear resentment from the other half. Survivor could think, well, to be honest, I can understand your frustration and your anger. I don't blame you. But in fairness, fear can be a survivor understands, possibly, but at the same time, they don't want to deal with the conflict, the arguments, the demands, the questioning, the interrogation. Not because they don't think that the other half doesn't deserve answers, it's just because it triggers a hostile environment. The pace of tone, the tone of voice, the sound, demanding words, too many questions, it can overwhelm the survivor's brain, nervous system, and it can trigger brain fog and just not being able to explain in that moment. And it's just more so the resentment from the other half can feel like a trigger to the past when it's come down to conflicts and arguments, falling outs with the past bad ex-partner. Once again, it's just the theme and the concept which can carry a weight and a trigger. So when, no matter who activates it, it has a profound effect on the survivor. So as much as a survivor wants to connect with someone, or may even feel like they owe it to the other person to give answers and explanation, the fear is, I just don't want them to react badly or negatively because I don't want to see them angry. It upsets me in general, but also I don't want them to get angry and start raising their voice or asking lots of questions because I might not have the capacity to be able to provide that. I don't want to let them down anymore. And I don't want to see them angry because dealing with conflict in general in life, I don't deal with it well. And I put up with enough of that conflict anyway with toxic family members around me. I don't want an extension of that in the very place I was supposed to call home, as in that new relationship. I don't want that relationship to be toxified like how it is everywhere else in my life. I want this one place to be preserved and perfect. If they get angry or frustrated with me, it feels like it's all lost and broken and there is nowhere else to go. And the conflict of anger and frustration may indirectly trigger a memory in the past by an ex-partner who raised their voice or got angry. Not personal with this new relationship, but just the concept and the theme, the triggers can activate a past memory and a unwanted, unpleasant feeling, which, can be hard to deal with, especially when already feeling low and limited energy. So it's about approaching it in a gentle, careful way to protect yourself and maybe for the survivor to protect that once relationship. That sometimes the fear can be too strong, like how it was with arm's length back then, that liking and appreciating but can't push any further or get closer because not wanting to ruin it. But then what actually happens then over time? It goes nowhere. Who really wins? So it's a balancing act between protecting one's peace, protecting the concept of an ideal relationship, but still being able to pursue it in a calm manner. How is it possible to reach out to a person to avoid resentment, to get a better outcome? That could be how you word it and how you explain yourself. I said it's important to be real with yourself, true to yourself and the situation when reaching out. You don't have to pretend to be okay or fine, because if you were, that could indirectly trigger a negative reaction from them, because without context, you may be doing it to try and be that bright light again, because you don't want to be honest, you don't want to drag them down, but it can lead to mixed signals, crossed wires, in which you're performing, like how you may with clients' work wearing a mask, pretend everything's okay or fine, but that uses a lot of energy and effort up. To the other person, the other partner that has no clue what's going on or left in the dark, if they see a person all happy and bright, to them, it might be like, wait, you're so full of life, yet why have you been gone for so long? Then it could lead to all kinds of conspiracies and doubts of, well, if you're okay now, then what were you doing all that time? Which can lead to interrogation, frustration, and anger. That's why it's important to be real, to be truthful. Being truthful does not mean having to explain yourself completely. You don't have to. You don't have to owe them an answer, but you owe it to yourself to be honest, real. What could that be as an example? I said I'm going to do a separate video anyway on this as an extension, but it could be, hi there, I'm still not ready. I'm dealing with a lot. I hope you understand. Something along the lines of that. You don't have to expose yourself much. but to explain that distance, the severity of it, just a few honest words without having to pour out too much, without having to give too much, you know? There is a way around it. If it's driven by fear of the past, that there's been moments like this already and how they reacted, got to consider, how did you reach out or connect then? And how can it be different now? What can be, done differently this time round as well? Of course, you can always weigh it up as well, just based on the personality of that said partner or person you're reaching out to. Like, look at it this way. Maybe reaching out to several people is too overwhelming, but reaching out to that one person that understands you is the right direction. If the person you truly want to reach out to, who you love most, but what you also fear losing, as in a new partner, recent partner or so, if you worried reaching out to them first could trigger resentment, is it possible you could try reaching out to a different person instead, like a friend, a low effort, low demanding, low pressure, low expectation role area where you could reach out to someone with little judgment, with little resentment, and go from there? That's an alternative way. But at the end of the day, if the relationship and the connection that you're with and you share with someone, or you did at one point, if they treated you a certain way and made you feel good, and how they handled situations back then was relatively good, great, or okay, and if there was rough patches or disagreements or struggles, how did they react? How did they treat you? What did they do for you when you were struggling? Were they there for you? Did they try to support you? Even if you pushed them away or said, I'm okay, it's fine, don't worry, because you didn't want to drag them down, did they try to help? Was that consideration, that thought there at least? Because if you really know them, right, and you know what they're like and how they act, that could make it a bit easier, as in process of elimination of the different possible reactions they could come back with in response to that reconnection phase. If you know they're not an angry type and they can be very understanding and very patient, well then you shouldn't have to fear the level of resentment as much. And this is another thing to consider. Besides being real and honest with yourself and partially with them, it's about the length of time, how it's gone on for. The longer it's gone on for, like how they say, time heals. It doesn't always have to be time healing, but it can also be time leads to a possible better understanding. But if a person goes absent for far too long, it's more likely going to be understood as something bad has happened, something quite severe. If a person is absent for a few days, the severity isn't quite there. It just seems like silent treatment or something. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like if a person was to go missing and they're missing for a few hours, people aren't going to think much about it. If a person's missing for a day, people may consider and question. If a person is missing for days, if not weeks, and longer, then there is more panic. You get what I'm saying? Depending on how things last were or how they ended abruptly, if there's an abrupt factor as well, that can be taken into consideration too. It does come down to your own unique connection with that said person back then, and how you interacted and what they knew about you, and if they knew that you struggle and etc., well then there'll be a deeper level of understanding. And even if left in the dark, a severe long time of silence, there can be a more understanding in a way. As in, it's gone on too long, this silence, clearly something must be wrong, something bad must have happened. You know what I'm saying? So there's that understanding that, yeah, we don't have the answers, but it seems clear something severe bad has really happened, that when you do reach out and honest, they're probably more likely to feel it for you. And that can create its own worry and fear of, are they going to overreact in a positive way, overstimulating, overprotective, too much too soon? We'll get to that shortly, but let's just highlight the other areas and factors as well. Another fear or worry could be, have they moved on? With the time that has passed by and elapsed, has the other half just had enough and moved on in life? That is like an uncertainty at first. A survivor wants to reach out to a loved one, but may worry, will they shut themselves up if they realise or find out that that partner is with a new one, has moved on? That can hurt a bit. Not personal, but it can still hurt. That inner feeling of, I was too late. I left it too long, I've ruined it, and then it just leads to self-negative talk, self-blame, self-punishment, and a survivor doesn't deserve to go through that after what they've already gone through and much more. So how is there a way around it? It won't apply to every situation, but if there's social media, if there's online involved, as in accounts and profiles, to, within reason, anonymously research, check for photos, check for status update, just to see. It's not about stalking, it's about protecting your own peace, protecting yourself first. Because if you find out they have moved on, then as for reconnecting, whether you choose to or not, at least you know what's up, what's ahead. You're not dealing with the uncertainty then. So then you know the next steps forwards based on the likely outcome. It reduces the disappointment, the hurt, the rejection. It just reduces the negative feelings. It could still sting a bit, but it reduces more negatives, which is a positive. So you could check online, you could check through social media. And if it wasn't just that, if you had a friend you could reach out to, a contact who you knew, a person you were aware of that was in contact with the said partner you want to reach out to, second-hand, third person, you could pass on a message or ask them a question and say, hey, is this person still around? How are they doing? Like a messenger in a covert way. That could link possibly back to the dynamic of when you pick the first person you want to reach out to. If the one you really want to reach out to feels like it's on a mountaintop, consider a different person first to connect with them and then try and see if you can pass a message on or get them to seek out and give you information to gain intel. So with what you're dealing with, how to approach the situation and to weigh it up, is it worth it or not? All these little steps and considerations and backdoor approaches, it can be done. Sometimes you might have to listen in and read in between the lines to see, are they available or not? Are they alone or not? Because the reconnection part, as in a relationship, as in reconnecting back into a relationship, needs to be open for it to actually work. And to avoid any misunderstandings, to avoid any conflict, to avoid all the negatives, a slow approach, methodical research within reason can be applied for the peace of the survivor too, right? So time can elapse quickly for some. For a survivor in a deep freeze and Groundhog Day, time can move differently, the speed of it. So it may feel a bit out of sync when trying to warm back up to a potential person. But once again, a bit of research can help ease the mind and find a bit of closure before making the next decision and step. The other fear can be a deep one. The fear of hurting that partner. A survivor may think very highly of someone, but fears by reaching out. If their silence and withdrawal up to now has contributed to any struggles, any suffering by that other partner, the survivor would feel likely terrible and their heart would probably hurt badly. The reason why a survivor's heart would hurt badly and that deep fear of hurting the very person that they tried protecting from their own darkness and it didn't work, the deep-rooted fear that the very person that they respect a lot in life still ended up hurting that said person, when a survivor bases themselves off trying to be kind, trying to look beyond the dark in people, trying to please everyone. And yet this one time, this one person of all people, of all situations, could not do that, ended up doing much worse, more damage than good to the very person the survivor looks up to and wants to connect with. The reason why it hurts so much, not just because of the connection and the emotional connection there, but it's because the survivor has been on both sides at some point in life. When reconnecting, if it's expressed by the other half how they feel, how hurt they are, how they struggle, and if they apply that to or contribute it to the silence of the survivor, or at least that's what the survivor fears, that that's how it could go, that's understandable. Because a survivor can relate to that pain of rejection, that pain of silence, that pain of being alone, that pain of losing someone. You know, also in the past with a previous relationship where it's like, that person abandoned me, that person went quiet on me. The survivor is left picking up the pieces, hurt by that. And then fast forward on in life, in the mindset of a survivor, a trauma response, a deep freeze, which wasn't personal or done with intent out of malice, it just happened. Whilst it's not the survivor's fault, the survivor can feel it's their responsibility and they should be held accountable. It's like once the survivor was on the receiving end, now it's someone else on the receiving end by the supposed actions of the survivor or the lack of actions. And then the survivor puts themselves in the shoes of that other partner who they think highly of, with the empathy and understanding, and it hurts them to know that their actions have contributed to this outcome with that said partner. It's a deep-rooted fear, not wanting to return back to see the supposed damage that has been caused by one's own actions. But this is not a blame game. I'm just giving you a scenario, the monologue, which can run and be going through the mind of a survivor. They've been there, they've been on the receiving end, they know what it's like, they don't want to see it for someone else who's struggling, and definitely they don't want to be told or find out or see it themselves that they are the reason for that other person's downfall, because that would hurt them. A survivor has been hurt badly and they may have prided themselves on trying to be a good, kind person. So when they appear or their actions appear unkind, or certain words are used to describe the situation, it can be very hurtful and painful for the survivor. And it's understandable, end of the day. All that can be done, in a way. It's just by gauging who that person is and how they handle situations. If they handled it well back then, they could handle it again well now. It can also come down to how you reach out and what you say. If you're honest, if you're truthful, big scale, small scale. There can be an underlying empathy still. You know what I'm saying? A person, I mean, this is the other thing as well. Just because a person is struggling or feels hurt, it doesn't have to mean that it's linked to your absence. They may have their own struggles in life, even when they met you too. There is that possibility that they could have been happy and positive around you, but onwards, maybe things have changed, but that's life, that's not on you in a way. But how they may be now isn't personal to you, or you're to blame, because how they may be now is maybe how they were before meeting you as well. In a sense that when you and they were in the same presence, it actually had a positive effect. But that doesn't have to mean you have to carry a weight and responsibility of, oh, I'm the reason why they're happy, so I've got to always be there. No. It shouldn't have to be like that. A survivor can have their own struggles and it's not personal to the other person. Well, it's the same way with the other half. The other half can have their own struggles and it's not personal to the survivor. But the reason why the survivor fears it and feels responsible, because of being blamed for everything in the past and accepting it, and by ex-partners blaming them, and being on both sides, on the receiving end and feeling responsible themselves for someone else struggling. In some ways, it could be that fear of not wanting to become the very thing, the very person that hurt them, because they know what it's like to be hurt, to struggle. They wouldn't want that on anyone. They wouldn't wish it on anyone. They wouldn't want to be the reason for someone else, especially when it's someone that they look up to and care about. That would hurt more. But again, just about pacing it and taking everything into consideration and understanding not every action or lack of action will contribute to another person's pain. There are other things, there are other factors, there's other stuff going on in life which could be causing it, and it's not down to you. Just like there may have been a time during a silence, a deep freeze, you're struggling, but it's not because of them. But there might have been a time where they blamed themselves or felt responsible. It's a normal self-defense mechanism to find a bit of closure, to blame oneself, because it's easier to do than facing the reality that it might just be out of your control. Sometimes people would take the accountability for someone else hurting if it meant maintaining a level of stability and control. When accepting the actual reality that it's not personal, it's not on them, the other person is struggling individually, it feels like a loss of control and power, feeling powerless, not being able to solve the situation, make the person feel better, not being able to do much, and that can create its own fear, worry, and personal frustration with life. So that's why self-blame can come in quick, to try and gain back that control and power and stability. And the reality is, it might be out of one's reach, one's control, and it's not them to blame. Well, that can apply here as well with the reconnecting process. The timing, the coincidence of a person struggling doesn't have to amount to the absence or withdrawal, right? Worth considering. Now, another one could be the fear of having to explain the absence and driven by the length of time it's gone on for. When gaining enough strength, power, energy to try and reach out, you might only have so many words to say and you want to make them count. The fear is, if they ask too many questions or they appear overly concerned and you have to try and explain yourself, it can lead to brain fog and it can lead to the pressure of being honest, which can be a bit too much at first. It's like when a person has recovered, come back from hospital, you can't just rush about. You've got to take things slow and steady. There's a process to it. Just like this, there's a process to opening up and reconnecting. You don't have to put all eggs in one basket. You don't have to say everything all in one note, one letter, one text. To pace it. The aspect of explaining, a survivor could fear that because they may just not have the words to explain what's happened because of the surreal nature of it. Survivor could feel it within everything, but may not be able to translate it into words. So if one was to reach out, that would need to be made clear for the protection of the survivor and the peace, without the other half demanding or asking too much. So an example could be, "Hi there, I know it's been a long time. I don't have the words to put in place as in what's happened or to explain how things are, but just know how I feel within speaks millions of words which I just can't share with you at this moment. I hope you understand." An example like that, it doesn't have to be polished or perfect, but it's about being able to reach out, release your energy, but also in such a way that it does not yield a demanding response after. Because sometimes the fear is the commitment. Does it mean if I reach out now, does that mean they will expect me to be back to normal? If I reach out now, does that mean I've got to be show all the emotions and be there 100%? It doesn't have to be like that. No one said it has to be like that. The power and choice is in your hands, as in how you connect and what you say. I'm just giving examples on the best way to reach out to avoid any negativity or any pressure, to reduce the pressure, the demands. No matter how good that other friend or partner might be, it's still about being, careful with the approach for one's own sake, yourself, right? Because if you're already going through enough already, don't want any more added on to it, right? So, little steps. Now, the next fear could be the pressure to make up for lost time. There might be that urge deep down within to reconnect, to have intimate talks, deep talks, or just joking around, meeting in person, doing stuff, wanting to do stuff which should have been done back then but never happened. The length of time it goes on for the withdrawal or silence, it feels like there's a long, big void to fill in, that worry and fear of, I must, if I reach out, give it all, give everything, give every bit of love, every bit of honesty in one go. But that can lead to exhaustion, it can lead to burnout, and you don't want that, especially if you've already gone through it or you're still going through it right now. Preserving energy and using enough already to reach out is a lot. So, just about reminding yourself, by reconnecting does not mean jumping back into the deep end. It's just a simple, low pressure reach out and they may reply. And that's it. It doesn't have to go any further past that point, or it could slowly with time. It's all down to choice, personal choice. Maybe there's less to deal with now. So as for pacing, the demand isn't quite there. The void where it feels like it needs to be made up for lost time, is it necessary to rush in? Because if going in with the correct approach, it won't open up that demand for making up for lost time. Maybe making up for lost time can happen later, at a later point, if the connection was to move forwards. And then deal with it together from there. It shouldn't be all about you having the pressure to make it up for the lost time. In a sense, what you've gone through, likely unexpected, not planned, how they've dealt with it or what they could do, they couldn't do much either. So life has separated two people. The past has separated two people. The time where people come back together at some point, maybe there's a way where it's not one person making it up for the other lost time, it's both people making the most. A shared experience, a shared, give and take. So the pressure is eased. But that is a fair and an example, counterpoint, which can be applied onwards in the future. It's not the first thing that has to happen when reconnecting. There can be an order to it, right? To reduce that pressure. The other fear could be the old versus new self or current version. That fear of, if I reconnect with this partner, do I have to be like my old self? The old self that they fell in love with or knew me by at first. If I show up as my new self or my current self, whatever that is, are they going to think less of me? Are they going to love me less? Are they going to be put off by me? Are they going to be scared off? Are they going to be bored by me? Like an example could be, let's just use an example. A survivor back then struggling silently but trying to be bubbly, happy and making everyone feel warm and welcome. But that uses up a lot of energy. If that approach, being happy and bubbly to hide the sadness, for that partner at the time coming on in, they like what they see, they connect with the said survivor, but then it might feel like the survivor has to keep that act up because that's all that the other partner knows them by. But then in opening up slowly, showing the true self, if that ever happened, if that other partner still stayed with them, did not move, did not deter, did not run away, that has to mean something. And the compliments as well. The more opening up, even if a survivor feels like they expose themselves too much, said too much, if that other person still stuck around regardless, that's a positive sign, something to apply in the present right now. that you should not fear your current self, and they should be welcoming of it within reason, because, they see you, they see you. How you were back then may have been a shield, a protection. How you are now might be your real raw self. And if there's fear that your real raw self is going to push this recent partner away, well, then it says more about them in a negative way. You know what I'm saying? If they're truly the right person, as in a relationship or even a friend, if they're truly the right person for you, you shouldn't have to fear your current self in the presence of them, because there should be an understanding. But on a personal level, it's understandable a survivor could fear my old self, how I was then, versus how I am now. Back then, I gave so much, but maybe not enough. Right now, I've got limited energy, I've got limited capacity because of the freeze, ongoing struggles. There's not much I can give or feel like I can offer. I don't want to let that person down. I don't want to let myself down based on my perfectionism, based on how I normally am or have been in the past. That's understandable. But once again, could be treated as a defining moment that if this is the one time where you're most real, raw, unfiltered, you're being honest with yourself, and that's what matters most. Being honest with yourself, no hiding, no repressing, no suppressing, as in trauma, as in struggles. This is all very real. So if decisions can be made in a real moment, real decisions can be made, real outcomes can come about, but it's still down to your pacing, timing, and your choice. And that if by reaching out or reconnecting, if the other half does understand, it shows that your real, raw self was always appreciated, and that's what they saw beside the shield, beside the bubbles. Maybe in some ways they preferred that raw, darker side, maybe, because of their own personality. You've got to consider that as well. How are they like in life? Has there ever been a time where, even privately, that they were really honest with you about their life and you felt like you couldn't quite match that because you're used to using that defense mechanism of masking your actual emotions or feelings because it was easier, it's safer, or you don't want to drag them down, and yet they had no problems being their raw self, even if it was just with you. But then see it this way. If that was ever a case back then, well, how you are now, your new self, your current version, raw, unfiltered, well, surely they would be even more welcoming and more understanding of that version because it might align more with how they are in life, possibly. It's another thing to consider. And as well, your old self doesn't have to define or be used as a measuring stick for how you are now and in the future. You can change with time. You have the choice with that, as in style, appearance, mindset, thoughts. Things can change with time. You shouldn't have to remain a shadow of who you once were or hold to where you once were. You can adapt. You can evolve. Things like that can happen. Should be fine. Now, number 8 could be partner expectations. And this can come down to how you reach out in the first place. But the fear is, by reaching out and reconnecting, will it be, are they going to think I'm fine again and things can go back to normal and we can make up for lost time and we can push on ahead and try and, make things work this time round and make it different this time? That's too overwhelming. A survivor may already be dealing with low energy and reserves that much noise and expectation, which a survivor may not have the capacity to give or share, can create its own dysfunction, frustration, self-negativity, self-blame and all that. And that does no good. It just compiles to the ongoing struggles. So the way of reducing partner expectations, as in, everything's back to normal now, it's how you reach out. If you reached out all happy and bubbly, they will likely or possibly expect things to be fine and normal now. Expectations. But if you are honest with yourself as somewhat honest with them, and you don't have to say much, there won't be as many expectations. If you can go into reconnecting with low expectations to reduce the disappointment by wording your response in a low expectation way, when they read it or see it in some way or listen to it, they'll be thinking, okay, they are struggling, or they're not ready. Well, then I can't really demand or expect much. It can work both ways, and that can be a silent form of communication, a silent mutual respect. If you jumped in, hi, all happy faces and smiley stuff, they'd probably pounce on that metaphorically and match that energy, which maybe you can't match long term. It's only in the moment. A masking device which was used back then, which may not work now. But if you're honest and raw, even if it's just a few little words, then maybe they can match that same energy. And by matching it, there's an underlying profound respect and boundaries. That's what's important as well. As things have happened and it feels negative, if boundaries can be established by how much you can give, what you can offer, and what you can't, making it clear, then they should be able to respect that and match it as well. If you can't reach out much or often, then they don't have to either. It's just mutual respect. But it's about saying that you've done it, you tried it. It's about showing that, if it does work or low expectations, and they match it, then it shows that they respect your boundaries, and boundaries are put in place in the first place. That can help rebuild the heart and rebuild trust in the background by knowing that that person is the right one, or knowing that the situation wasn't completely broken, that this encounter wasn't all by the silence. Things like that, just boundaries, respect on the sideline, which can help the heart grow too, or warm it up slowly. Small, low expectations leads to less disappointment or no disappointment. And it reduces the pressure to perform. It reduces a lot of things. So then, not much has to change unless people want it to change. On the spot or slowly with time. It's just gentle. Now, number 9. A survivor may fear by reaching out or expressing much. It could mean to a loss of self-control or being seen as weak. If it's been more so driven by the past, vulnerability, how a previous ex-partner drilled it into the mind of the survivor, being honest, open, or vulnerable means you're weak. It's not true, but a survivor may have been convinced and brainwashed because of the ex-partner in the past that by opening up now more floodgates, it might feel like, I've been too seen, I've exposed myself too much. Well, again, a way of reducing the fear and maintaining control is by reminding yourself the ball is in your court. There's nothing that they can do because maybe you've kept your distance or you've blocked communication. So you're the one ultimately in power, in control there. And the next move you make, as in reconnecting, reaching out, commenting publicly, a public comment, almost a private one in a respectful way, by not having to explain every detail, because you don't have to explain every detail. You don't really have to say anything at all. But if you're going to say something, just to keep it simple, maybe. Enough so they understand that, things are bad. I get it. I understand. Take your time. That type of communication and understanding. And it can be achieved if handled appropriately. Number 10 and number 11 can tie in line. The fear of the burden effect and the fear of the future repeating itself. What's happened now, what's happened back then? The fear of reconnect, re-establish, get close again. Is it going to happen all over? Will there be a trauma response in the future? Will there be unresolved trauma where it could lead to a deep freeze, clamming up, shutting the world out? You have to be honest with yourself, and even in a relationship, honest there together. There is a chance it could happen again. But what's important is to make the most in the moment and to build off from that. Just like with the reconnecting part, retrusting the heart, building boundaries both ways and respecting them, it can lead to a level of comfort and safety. The reality is, a trauma response, a deep freeze, shutting the world out can happen. Short term or long term, it can happen again and again and again. But what can change is who you shut out and who you avoid. If you know deep down, and this is a long-term thing, but it's what can be built from this very moment of reaching out and reconnecting. If there can be a time where you're confident that you can say and share and be open with no fear, no consequences, no worries, then it creates a safe space and a deep safety with a said person. So everyone else you connect with, who you can open up to a mild extent, or on the surface level communication, small talk, when things get really bad and you retreat, or a survivor does, yeah, shut the world out, but you shut the world out together. That's not about the other half shutting the world out and isolating themselves from other people, but it's just about creating that retreat, that silent retreat, wherever it is in the world or what place one lives in, where survivor can recuperate or hibernate, deal with it, but at least another person, as in the other half, is let into the world of the survivor because there's no fear of dragging them down. And yeah, there is that possibility that during a deep freeze, the mind changes feelings and thoughts, but one thing that won't change is deep down the memories of what that survivor knows within that other half, as in all that history leading up to that moment, all that history of safety, security, reassurance, and validation. If you, in this moment in time before any of that happens, the future, if you can be honest with yourself and reflect back on, did that one person you got on well with, a friendship or a partner or an early relationship, did they make you feel safe? You can write it down on paper. You could use it in the future. Did they make you feel safe? Did they make you feel sleepy? Did you feel like you could possibly fall asleep on them without any fear? Did you ever get that urge or feeling that you could bury your head into their shoulder and look away, as in disarming yourself? Did they ever melt you so badly that your limbs went light and you couldn't think straight? Ultimately, did they make you feel heard, understood, and believed in when maybe family members and friends did not believe in you in the past, but this one person does? If it's a yes to any of them, or some of them, or all of them, ask yourself, for the time that you had with them, did it seem consistent? Whether they had the time or the opportunity to demonstrate it, did it seem like, or was it consistent in their approach? Because if so, that's the foundations of a unbreakable connection, a deep connection, and something that can stand the test of time and the storm. To remind yourself, there can be the fear and worry of another freeze, withdrawal, and isolation, and that fear of, I don't want to hurt them anymore. It's not fair on them. That's understandable. But if this is kind of like the first time something like this has happened, and it's one of the most severe ones going, that if he was able to reconnect, and if they were able to understand and able to make subtle changes with time to be more honest, to be more open both ways, and to discuss about it, together, that can set up for the future. So when shit goes down in the future, you've already survived one of the worst storms possible. But if this current situation is a deep freeze, something very severe, or it's happened before, or not in a long time, or it's a first time thing, this, if there's a way to reconnect and find a way through to get to the other person, to slowly build again, and there's an understanding too, it shows the worst time you found a way through. So if it happens again in the future, there's more hope. If there can be a plan in place, little changes, as in, if I'm not doing too good, here's one emoji. I've not got the words to say how I feel, but here's an emoji to say I need time out. Things are getting too hard. Little clues, little ways of communication. A person loses their voice, there is still always a way to communicate in some way. And that's what can be integrated within a friendship or a relationship. So then if it happens again in the future, both parties involved know how to act or what to say and what to do within reason. And by getting used to it and making little adjustments with time, it gets a little bit easier to deal with and cope with, and at points, not coping alone, but coping together, finding a solution together. That's long term. It's about focusing in on the present, in the moment. And if in the present, in the moment, you can think of good moments with that said person, and there was levels of security and stability. Maybe if sometimes there was a trauma trigger somehow because the relationship was getting too real, too safe, which is something you're not used to. That's a positive sign as well. That it was moving in the right direction, and sometimes before something gets better, it gets worse. So what gets worse, if finding a way through that, then only things can get better from there on, within reason, you know? As said, the concepts of reconnecting and retrusting the heart and how to do it, I can do a follow-up video if I need to add any more points in, fill in any more perspective, elaborate on anything if you want it elaborated. But it was just important to highlight the fears, but then also provide a counterpoint for perspective. So then not everything is all dark, but you at least know with what you're working with. Nothing worse than thinking all positive, neglecting the negatives, and then later facing possible consequences and it having more of an impact because you weren't anticipating it. If you know what you're dealing with, then you may know how to handle it a bit better, or you'll know how to react to it a bit better when you anticipate, in a way, right? So we'll leave it there for now, but hopefully the video makes sense and it was somewhat easy to follow. If it helped, and if you want to see a follow-up video to this in retrusting the heart and reconnecting, let me know by hitting the thumbs up, the like button, and yeah, we'll leave it there for now. Take care. Appreciate those that have watched, and of course those watching in the background. So goodbye, good night for now.